Hi guys, my name is Sarah Longe'S and I am the host of the ATM podcast. For those of you who've been following the ATM podcast since season 1, this is the All That Matters podcast. Literally, we are launching the podcast on YouTube. I feel like I've said podcast like 100 times, but yeah, it's a podcast, so that's what I'm going to call it. But yeah, this is our first season on YouTube, so I'm super excited to be bringing the ATM podcast to you guys visually as well as audio. To everyone who's followed from season 1, welcome. Thank you. And if it's your first time coming across us and you haven't heard about season 1 before the ATM podcast, you can actually go back on all platforms that podcasts are released and listen to our previous episodes. But yeah, so we're back with season 2. And I can't believe it's been 1 year since launching the podcast. Like, it's mad because actually it's not been a year. It's been more than that. So we launched it in December 2021. And yeah, season 1 was just amazing. We had guest co-hosts speaking about everything from finance to relationships to money to careers, business. Literally, the season was fantastic. And so this season, we've come up bigger and better with more guest co-hosts. So I can't wait to bring to you all of the amazing things that we're going to be discussing this season, because literally, we discuss all things that matter. Do you like that? ATM, all that matters. Anyway, so today, I thought it would be good just to have a sit down and just speak about what really I've been doing since the last, I think 6 months or so. I should even bow my head in shame since our last episode. Really, there's a lot of things I've been doing. And actually, maybe I'll save that for another episode. But what I will do today, actually, is speak about 5 things that I have learned personally since 2023 has started. Like, I actually cannot believe we are halfway through the year. Like, it's almost like, and correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm not anyone who feels like this, but it's like every year you get older, the year seems to go faster. Like, I don't remember being 15 and it being May after about 5 minutes. It being June after about 6 minutes. Like, I literally feel like I was doing a Happy New Year in church literally last month. No, we're halfway through the year and it is crazy. But with that being said, I think 2023 has been kind. I think like all years, I don't know, it was almost like easing our way into just everything from the cost of living. From the cost of living to just changes, the fact that there's a war around the corner. Like, if I'm being honest with you, I think our generation has lived through some, you know, when history books, like you do history in school and you read back, and you're like, how did this really happen? And the people who lived in the time were probably thinking, I can't wait for this to be a part of, someone's history. We're going to be a part of someone's history lesson. And that's mad to me. But just to know that we are living through it. And I would even say some of us are actually thriving through what should be a really challenging time. It's just testament to, I guess, resilience, testament to God, testament to so many different things. And I just want to share a couple of things that I've learned this year. So the first thing that I've learned this year is that relationships are seasonal. So my last episode actually, I think maybe it was the beginning of this year. I think I put an episode out, or maybe the end of last year, where I was talking about friendship dynamics and just how friendships are one of those things that you have to almost temperature check it. You can have expectations of a friend to be a particular way, and maybe you've held on to the fact that you've known this person for 5-6 years. But the reality of the situation is people change. And when people change, friendships change with them. Their relationships change with them. But then just looking at relationships holistically and not just friendships, like they are actually seasonal. And when I say that, I don't mean they're seasonal in the sense of, one day they're there, one day they're not, which obviously can be the case. But the things you go through in your relationships changes in every single season. Whether it's a platonic relationship, whether it's a relationship between you and your parents, whether it's a relationship between you and your partner, you and your children, whatever it may be, even your relationships at work, there'll be some seasons where you may find that your relationships are stronger than ever. And there'll be some seasons where you find that, you just need that time. And for me, I think that's been my main thing. There are people, I would say, who are in my inner circle, who on a normal day, I'm speaking to them multiple times a day, either via iMessage, because I don't like WhatsApp. I don't like WhatsApp. If you ever try to WhatsApp me, it takes me like days to reply. either they try to message me. I mean, either we message or we call or we video call. And these are my day-to-day people. But what I found is that this year I've been quite hidden, I would say. When I say hidden, I mean, I'm out there on socials and everything like that. But in terms of just like, you know, the relational part of relationships where you intentionally make time out to do those calls, to go out and so on and so forth. I think that this year for me has been very different. And doesn't mean I've been not intentional with my relationships or with my friendships. I just think the season that I'm in my life right now has meant that maybe subconsciously I just have not been all there in the ways that I was. And I started to feel a bit guilty for it. And I speak to one of my friends and she said, but Sarah, like the season you are in also determines the seasons of your relationships. The most important thing is you are intentional, and your intentionality doesn't mean that you're intentionally calling them every day like you used to, because maybe the season doesn't allow you to call every day, right? I was speaking to, my cousin just literally before this session, and we're talking about things like, when you make the decision to move from home, and it's almost like, okay, cool, I'm staying at home for whatever reason, and maybe it's because you want to save your parents and make sure they're good, right? And if you flip with your mum, for example, just you and your mum, you want to make sure they're good, and you have that kind of guilt leaving, especially if you're the last one there. But the reality of the situation is there's going to be a time when you have to go, and maybe your season of being there and being that constant, maybe that's gone. You could just be a constant from another location. And I think that's something I've definitely learned. So let me know what you think about that. If am I the only one, are we all here kind of thinking like, rah, like things are changing? But that's definitely a lesson that I've learned. Like relationships are seasonal, and actually it's not bad. The second thing I've learned this year, and I think this is a big one, and I'm going to come in strong with number 2, is have grace on yourself. And I think this links really nicely to the first one, because what I found myself doing was I was trying to do so many different things all at once. And when things weren't going the way I wanted it to go, I was literally like beating myself up. But the truth of the matter is, times have changed. Like times have changed. We have more responsibility. Things are a lot harder, in my opinion. I just think we've become stronger, so we've learned how to navigate through life. But when we deepen, we look at what we have to contend with day in and day out. Yes, I said contend because life can sometimes feel like a war. We don't give ourselves enough grace. We don't give ourselves enough mercy for the times that we make mistakes. We don't give ourselves enough, credit for the times when we've done things right. Like, let's be real. Giving yourself grace is a form of self-care. And I think when we make that link where we are realizing that actually it's important that I give myself care because I'm looking after myself, I'm looking after my mental health, then maybe you'll give yourself some credit. Like, don't wait for other people to applaud you. Like, sometimes applaud yourself. Like, sometimes I'm literally like, Sarah, you're dope. No one can tell you you're not dope. And other days, I probably say something that I shouldn't say about myself, right? And those are the days I'm reminded that not only does my words carry power and words are seeds, but I have to give myself grace, because if I don't give myself grace, I can't expect other people to give me grace. And even if they do give me grace, I wouldn't even recognize it because I don't even know what that looks like from a self perspective. The third thing I've learned this year, again, I think they all interlink, but this one was really important. Something always has to give. Now, I'm down for being a multifaceted woman. I'm down for, wearing multiple hats. Like, I'm down for it, yeah? But when you want to get to the next level, right, from where you are now, you have to sacrifice something. And that something doesn't need to be, maybe sacrificing a business or friendships or a job. But most times it's your time. Something has to give. You cannot remain, elevate by remaining in the same habits, doing the same things, and expect there to be some form of change. Like, something has to give. And that something having to give is always what we think we can't give. And that's been a hard lesson for me. If I'm going to keep it 100, I think that's been a lesson that I'm still learning. That whole narrative of women can have it all Do I subscribe to it? I think I'm in a season in my life now where I don't know if it's premature to answer that, but I feel like all is very subjective to the time you're in. All means different things at different points in your life. Like, I will tell you this for free, right? I cannot say I want to elevate the ATM podcast and come here and record sessions and, you know, have guests. And that involves me coming in multiple times a week and then have the same social life that I have. It doesn't mean I'm not going to have a social life, but elements of my social life will have to give. And I think that's a lesson that I've been knowing, yeah? I've known, but 2023 has really shown me that, and that's okay. And this is part 2 of that lesson. Like, don't feel guilty for it, because you feel guilty when you transition, and not even necessarily because what you're doing is wrong. Most times it's not wrong, but it's because you don't know how people are going to respond to it. So you have premature guilt because in your mind you're thinking, oh, like, I'm going to let this person down, right? Or I'm not going to be as present. Listen, transitioning is hard. Growing is hard. And I think we need to be realistic with ourselves and, yeah, just know that something has to give. Number 4, right? And this one is something that I think is like self-explanatory, but there's a caveat in there. Is there a caveat? I'm really using these words. I don't know if I'm using it in the right context. But anyways, and that is discomfort is a very healthy part of growth. Like, we always hear that saying, you know, when people talk about the fact that, you know, in order for you to grow, you need to be uncomfortable. And I think we hear it and we automatically have resentment. Like, why must I be uncomfortable to grow? Like, listen, everyone wants to grow, everyone wants to glow, all that good stuff, but why must it be painful? Like, why must I have to learn these lessons? Like, why do I have to be the strongest soldier? Like, literally the whys. And because we have that resentment, we don't actually realize how healthy it is to be uncomfortable. Because you being uncomfortable means you are denying yourself, right? You're denying yourself the comfort of basically staying bound, I would say. Like, because the truth of the matter is, you stop growing when you stop moving. And sometimes that movement requires you to be vulnerable. That movement requires you to give up something. It requires you to sit down with that person and just say things that you've never said to anyone before. Like, you know, whatever season you're in your life, like, I'm using very relational examples because the season I'm in my life. So you know what season you are in your life, and you know what areas you're growing in, right? It could be work. With me, it's definitely relationships, like hands down. But what I've realized is all the uncomfortable things I've had to do for the benefit of my relationships has caused me to grow. And that's healthy. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's genuinely healthy. And I think it's really understanding that for me, you know, I've looked at this the wrong way. I've looked at it as something to be resentful of and just be, or I don't know if resentful is the right word. I've looked at it as something as, do you know what? I just need to get to the end. I just need to get to the end where I've grown, right? And I know we're constantly evolving, but at least when I've hit one milestone, it'll all be worth it. But actually, the process is worth it. The process is necessary, because 9 times out of 10, the very thing you've done that's been uncomfortable will be easier to do the next time. It just takes that one time. And I've learned that lesson, and it has helped me so much. And it has salvaged, in my case, relationships that could have been like, past tense. It could have been one of those, oh, remember when me and that person used to be cool? You remember when me and that person used to kick it? Like, thank God that that's not my story. And I think I had to learn that lesson in order to, I guess, grow. Yeah. And the last one, and this one is so important, is my faith matters. And I think this one is, it in itself is an episode in itself. I think, obviously, I always share it. If you've listened to the ATM podcast before we came on YouTube, or you follow me on social media, I don't hide my faith. I'm a Christian. I love God. I love Jesus. But let's be real. Serving God as a millennial in 2023 is hard. And it's not hard because God's made it hard. It's hard because society has made it hard. And I can confidently say now that it's no longer harder for me because I had to shift my perspective. Because the world will tell you that your faith doesn't matter. Like, it will literally tell you that your morals are like a load of rubbish because it doesn't go with culture, right? And that was so hard for me to navigate because I'm not throwing away what I believe to make you feel comfortable. But what I found myself doing is I was silenced about certain things. So we will talk about real life issues, right? We'll talk about things like, boundaries in relationships. We'll talk about things that, in today's day and age, it's kind of like, no, you can't say that, because if you say that, you are slut shaming, or if you say that you are X, or if you say that you are this, and it's like, no. Like, my view does not stop you from being who you are. My view is just based off of my morals and my faith. And so whether you agree with it or not, that's between you and you, but my faith matters. And that has probably been the most important thing because it's the foundation of everything that I do and who I am. And it was so hard for me to just be authentic and just really stick to it, because what I mean by sticking to it is that the more you are silenced by your faith and your beliefs, the easier it is for you to start questioning whether your beliefs are valid. All of a sudden, things start to become very, very grey. And I noticed that for some areas in my life. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like I'm holier than thou, that I've never done things that the Bible says that I shouldn't do. I've never, had to repent for doing certain things. I'm not expose myself on this podcast. But the truth of the matter is, there's one thing knowing you've done something wrong and just repenting, or even knowing that maybe this isn't something that the Bible says is right or whatever, and you wanting to rectify it. That's one thing. But it's a completely other thing when you are trying to excuse it and try to almost rewrite the Bible. Like, you've almost done a volume 2 of the Holy Bible because it doesn't suit what you want. And that's what today's day and age is. But I had to say to myself, I think it was in a couple of months in, I think 2 months in, I literally had a pep talk with myself, and I said, Sarah, your faith matters. Your morals matter. And it's going to be harder for you to conform than it is for you to stand firm in who you are, because who you are makes up everything you do, and I can't change that. And so I just think I want to use that last point just to encourage anyone who feels like it's not sexy to be saved, who feels like they are the odd one out, who feels like their opinion isn't valid because it goes against what other people think. Yes, be very respectful of other people's views, but the same way that they deserve your respect, they should be able to give you respect. Don't be afraid that they're going to look at you being an oddball or being so irrelevant or out of time, because guess what? The word of God doesn't change. That's the same today, yesterday, and forevermore. That never goes out of date. How we interpret it doesn't go out of date, but our revelations that I believe God gives to us when we sit down will be relevant for the day that we're in today. So yeah, those are my 5 things so far that I have learned this year. Obviously I've learned more things, but those are things that I think have really stuck with me. And I'm so interested to see how the rest of the year goes. And one of the things that I love about the ATM podcast is we literally discuss everything. It's named the All That Matters podcast because everything that matters in our life is personal, but 9 times out of 10 other people can relate. And this platform is the place where we just let it all out. And what matters is very, very seasonal too. I feel like I've used the word seasonal so many times today, but it just goes to show it's very, very important. But anyways, that's it for today's episode of the ATM podcast. Thank you for sticking, and yeah, I'm so excited for season 2. I can't wait for you to see all of our special guests this season, and yeah, just to continue chatting with you guys. If you like what you have seen today, if you've liked what you've heard today, please make sure you subscribe and click the notification button below to make sure you never miss an episode. If you are not one for visuals, which I don't understand why, because why would you want to look at me all day? Now, guys, I'm not that vain. I'm just joking. But if you're not one for visuals and you just want to listen to the podcast in your car, whatever it is, the HM podcast is released every single week on all platforms. So you can download it, you can listen to it. And yeah, make sure you give us feedback as well. Like, interact in our comments. I promise you I'll respond. Thank you for tuning in to the HM podcast, where we cash out on a weekly basis. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time.